Okay, welcome to the October 1st, 2025 Master Plan Subcommittee meeting. And as we begin, just a point of reference, we received 459 surveys online. The majority of those came through the link that was in the tax bill. And then less than 100 were from the website. We did have 27 hard copies, which were predominantly those who weren't computer savvy. And we're thankful for those responses. I need to add those 27 hard copies to the document, and I wanted to be sure that I had your consent to do that.
I think that's,
Yeah, great.
I mean, it's only gonna be as verbatim. There's not gonna be no interpretation on my part. It's just verbatim as to what those 27 documents are.
Sure.
yeah, I think seems okay.
Okay?
Is there, like, would it be worth, is there any way to know if you input those and then hand the whole stack or divide them out and then just double check, like, yeah, this is,
I'm
don't know.
not sure how we'll be able to do that.
yeah,
Looking at, on the collect responses part of the page, there is a manual data entry, but it will just be dropped into the whole process, but I don't know how it's gonna work. Yeah, so I just fill it out just as if it was somebody else,
yeah, 27 times.
right?
Okay,
Because otherwise it's, and then it will just fall into the category or into the document. The other part that's interesting is under the analyze results. There is a means by which each so I gave you a copy starting with question 17 of the individual responses. So in those I can do, I'm trying to remember what they call it. So I can do a word cloud. I can do a thematic analysis and print that out as well for us to have, so that we have a better understanding of what the overall sentiment for those responses are. They will do that for us. So my goal, our goal, I hope, is to review the information and identify actionable points, so that those things would dictate how zoning should change or what goals zoning should have. It's also important that when you read those responses that are more personable, obviously there are some that say no, then I have more to say instead of leaving it blank. But those, we need to be sure we're not taking any of that personally. This is just an observation from their part.
no, it's awesome. a lot of very astute feedback.
Right. So you can, as an example, on question 17, the first one, we can review that whole respondent's answers. Whether that helps us or not, I don't think that's relevant, to be honest. To understand maybe how old they are or whatever, I mean, that could tell us some information about if there's a particular response that we say, we
Yeah.
want more information on this, we can. So my goal then is, I don't want us to, we're not reinventing the wheel by looking at this. So we just want to let the data speak for itself. And then identify, well, here's a problem area. And that will come up as far as once you get past that first section. That's why I gave you the copy of the master survey. Because once you get past that first section, which is basically demographics, even though you can respond there, you'll be able to see those particular areas that are now identified in the categories of like transportation, various things like that. And then if there's something that comes as you're looking over it, you want more information on, just let me know and I can see what I can do to discover the answer to the question. Okay? So you have the master, the top one that was in the little binder clip.
Yep.
That's the whole thing. But when you print that, no, the other one, the big one with the big clip, it's probably that. The one that's got the graphs and stuff.
Okay, yes.
That's the master response, the
Yes.
overarching thing.
Okay.
And then
There.
so when you work through that, you'll come to question 17, it'll say, do you have anything more to say? And then there's a packet for that.
Yeah.
I didn't put it in to where they should be, because some of those things are back to back, and the pages are, I printed to save paper
Yeah.
on each side. So I'm trying to remember what I had said to you. I said one thing. So part of the process would be to have a cover sheet, whether it's the information on the questionnaire to begin with, then have a general demographic of, which we can get offline, of the community, and then say, here's the introduction to the questionnaire, these are our responses, whether we want to do, everything the way it's printed, or we want to change the format. And so that would be our report, or the survey results. Report then would be say, these are the actionables that we've identified based upon the survey in all those categories. So an actionable would be something that would be important, say, because I've read parts of it and said, we want the rural character to remain. So how do that needs to be illustrated or explained in such a way that the planning board has a clear goal as to what.
So I guess what I'm curious about is sort of the step before that, which is, so we can, skim through a few hundred surveys, get our general impressions. We can use empirical numbers and get some impressions and use these artificial intelligence summaries. But for, there has to be a concrete way to decide, like, where are people swaying? Is it preservation or development, or like what are the sentiments in these different areas?
Right.
Like how
And
do
I
we
think
really
that's-
put our finger on
right.
that?
And I think that's
I
what
know
I'll-
we have all the
It's
data,
pretty,
but
it's pretty stark. Yeah, I mean,
But thing is that if you read through it, both of those points that you just illustrated or shared are there.
yeah.
That's important.
but it's like 2-to-1, keep it rural.
Correct. But it's also,
Well, if it's that obvious, then we know where things are leading. But like, I'm concerned that it's like not so obvious.
right.
I mean, if you look in this packet at the charts,
Yeah.
it's, in my opinion, obvious.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, we'll have to go through like multiple categories and see.
Right, I think for the most part, one of the assessments that initially is on is the the populace that were concerned were older people. The overwhelming are 50 plus, I think, if I remember correctly. That age group was the ones who took the time to fill this out. The others under that age, it wasn't as prominent. Then, so that demographic part at the beginning just gives us a kind of insight into life experience, so that we understand where they're coming from, because they're not just new to town, they've been here for a while, or that they've been involved, type of thing.
A couple young people took the survey, it was like someone between 18 and 24.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
4 people, yeah.
So, so then after that, the first category is transportation. I can't remember what it is. It's not transportation. Yeah, it is transportation. So there's 4 questions that deal with transportation, but it should give us an indication. Pretty clear as to what the concerns are. And then we'd assess whether those concerns are legit, or they're outside our purview, like our state highways, or that we make an appeal to the state to give us a say or insight into, or information pertaining to when those things happened, if that's the concern. So I'll go back and do a sentiment analysis on that, on each of those subcategories, because that's the only place that gives us, because the other, it's just raw data. There's not, other than the way it's presented, there's no other way to be discerning about the responses.
Yeah, I mean, not without doing like a cross-section of, like you said, it's possible, but is it worth doing, of, we get this cluster of responses, what is the type of person this response comes from?
Right.
Is there a reason to do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that is something that may be,
I mean, I think if we sift out, and then we come to the, like as an example, there's no direction in what the responses are. It's not overwhelming one way or the other. It's kind of middle road. So what do we do with something that's middle road? Do we say, okay, there's nothing to do here? I would say, no, there's something to do. There's something to assess. Because not everything is positive, and not everything's negative, but there's some truth laying in there somewhere that we need to discern. The other thing I'll do is what they're calling a word cloud. If you remember way back when we first started assessing other people's, other towns, they would use word clouds in part of their report. So that's another option that we can do. And that, again, that is dealing with those areas where there's an opportunity for personal response as far as verbiage is concerned, not as to where
yeah,
the data, the raw data.
flipping through it, it's gonna be a cloud with a giant rural in the middle, lower taxes hanging off of it, transportation cutting both ways.
Yeah, so.
Leave me
I'll
alone.
Yeah, I'll just go as an example for the word cloud for question 17. It's, the words that are standing out is where and children.
Well, but if you look through the responses, having flipped through them, it's because we did a poor job and we did not allow an option to specify that you have 0 children.
Correct.
And so that's
That-
not,
that's
it's not
one-
to say people are, oh, we
Right.
need a place for children to live, as it
Right.
may,
Right.
it
But see,
was-
that's, again, that is dealing with that one category. So if I go to, what's the next one, 19? So as far as there's 31 themes, because I did an analysis, thematic analysis on that. So I'll do all those things so that you have them. But a word cloud on transportation, the only repeated really that stops out is roads.
Very helpful.
Right. So even though there's a technique there, it's not something that's a helpful tool, right? Whereas if we go to the thematic analysis, how do I can see this? In a bigger place. That doesn't help. This is the part I don't like about this. Once you go back to the beginning, you have to scroll back through the whole thing to get where you want to be. So the thematic analysis is really road maintenance is 15%. For transportation, road bridge conditions is 11%. Speed and traffic violations 11%. And then it drops off to under 10% for driver behavior, winter road management, public transportation, bicycle pedestrian.
that does seem more useful, and just looking over your shoulder a little bit, seems more useful than the word cloud to
Right,
get that granular.
yes, yeah. And I think that's something I can print out.
Just from like perusing the responses on question 19, the stats you just said, that sort of checks out with what I'm seeing, so.
Right. I don't know if there's that doesn't help.
Yeah, what does 46 look like? That's the, what do you think is the best thing about where? And then same thing for 47, what's like? I don't know, some of these are so funny. And,
46 isn't a bad place to start, actually, for the analysis. And I guess we'll have to cover it all, but some good stuff in here.
So the The top is rural character preservation as far as themes are concerned. So when we hit the word cloud, rural
Yeah.
stands
Yeah.
out.
Rural. Community.
Yep.
Quiet, rural
Small
character.
town.
Yeah.
And that's, so
Low
if
taxes.
I understand the way the word, this goes, the most important things are still towards the middle and works its way out, if I understand it correctly. You know, it's like, programming and resources that the town of Bartlett provide are distinctively different than what we provide. So they have a town rec program that runs all their athletic programs. It's not two different departments, two different things. It once was a volunteer Bartlett Athletic Association, but that got absorbed into the rec department because everybody around them had a rec department that had a director who facilitated all of that. Yet Bartlett's one of the lowest taxed communities in the state. So it's something to, I guess that's an assessment to look at if ultimately, if one of the things that leap off the page is everybody wants lower taxes, well, what does that look like for a town our size in comparison to other towns? Or towns that have lower taxes, why are they able to have lower taxes? Is their population different, or what? I don't know. How that works, I don't know.
Yeah. Fewer services.
Pardon me?
Fewer
Yes, sir?
services. The school budgets that aren't absurd.
Could be, but they're also a sending community. Their high school, they don't have a high school, so the only option they have is Kennett.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was up there, it was $9,500 a student,
That's not bad.
but that was 20-something years ago,
Oh,
so I have no
okay.
idea what that is
Okay.
now. Worst thing. Town.
That's not super helpful.
So I'd like to question 48, and that's where that rural character comes out again.
That being, if you could identify one vision for where, what would
Right.
it be?
Right. And the words that come out are town, community, businesses, development.
Yeah, but you had that other view, which summarized it more than just a word, because like,
Yes, the thematic analysis was helpful. Rural character, business growth and expansion, small town character, fiscal and cost management. I mean, it's hard to be discerning about, like, there were a couple of comments that were talking about low-income housing, workforce housing, and yet managing developmental sprawl at the same time. And how does that work? How do you say you can't do that? You'd have to have a zoning ordinance that would say we are limiting our expansion, our development in our community to X amount of units a year.
Mhm.
Or X amount of units over a 10-year period or 5-year period. I think we had a while ago, a building moratorium on how many building permits could go out in an annual basis, or even as a developer. I think the developer could only take like 4 or 5 permits a year. So they couldn't develop a rolling hills that's got
Yeah.
20-plus houses in one year.
There is a lot of anecdotal sentiment here for why do the big guys get to keep stomping on the little guys, which
Right.
I don't think is entirely unfounded. And yeah, the things you're recommending, I think, are certainly worth considering.
Well, our job is just to report,
Correct.
so.
Yeah, we want to give some guidelines to the planning board, because they're going to be the ones that's going to finalize what the plan is. And that's, to be honest, from the last one, there was debate by members on the board who were members then as to whether they really signed off on it or not. And if you read the plan, master plan right now, the majority of it is report. And it's like 4 or 5 pages at the end of 200-something pages that are actionables. And then those actionables have no teeth, because it tells this falls under such and so and their budget. Well, like the planning board has no budget, but that's what the report said. And it's like, how do you consider that? And how do we manage, I guess one of the things that ultimately we'd probably have to address is, how do you manage growth in a constructive way when you have folks who would love to have a pharmacy in town, but where are you going to put it? And then when you do put it where it's permitted, you're still going to have some folks who are going to be upset about such, like when Dollar General went in.
Yeah, and with this data,
So,
the majority of folks.
So, I mean, for example, with question 48, the software can help us in this specific area. There's a lot of people, it does seem overwhelmingly we want the rural character, but there's definitely a strong contingency that wants Market Basket, Walmart, Wendy's, and McDonald's. So for example, with this question, just being able to say 10% are for building all these amenities, and then, 90% is for rural or status quo or something like that, like broad categorization, something like that.
So we do have that from the questions themselves. Like, I'm going backwards, ran first into question 35. What type of businesses would you like to see more of and where? Overwhelming agricultural business, CSA, small farm, maple syrup, etc., and then agritourism, and then restaurants, retail. It's tailing. We dropped below 50% when we went from restaurants to retail. Professional services, recreation facilities, dropping further to renewable energy, further to other, and no more businesses at the bottom.
right. So based on that, it's suggestive that we want business, a certain style. And I can see, when you look at renewable energy to restaurants, your top 3 are agricultural, agritourism, and restaurants.
Yeah, so if there are any
So-
farms
so-
in town that want to open a farm-to-table restaurant,
Yeah. Right.
looking at the guy with the farm.
Which is hard to discern, because there's one in Jackson that just closed.
Yeah.
They've been open for 20 years or so, and now it's up for sale, the whole property. And it had a good reputation. And it's in, working with seniors family-wise and oral surgeon-wise. I have an oral surgeon who says, the majority of my patients in the North Country and Mount Washington Valley are retirees. And if their mouths aren't healthy, they go downhill very quickly, because what do they have? They're not working. If they have a hobby, they have a hobby, but most of them, the hobby is going out to eat.
Well,
And
we have a
so-
dentist and an orthodontist in town, so
Right.
we're good there.
But, you know, most people go to Henniker, to the Pancake House, or to Putnam's, or Sawyer's. Are there opportunities for that type of development here? I think there is, but it's a unique niche when you have,
Retail shop. Still waiting.
yeah,
But that's for, that's for the private sector to
Mhm.
figure out, that's not our purview, that's
correct.
even planning board, that's.
Well,
comes
that's,
to you and.
right,
then-
that's the rub. What's the big picture for, how do you discern proper management of growth? And is that the planning board's purpose? Well, if this is a master plan for us, yes. But it can only become their purpose if zoning is approved. So, based upon this report, it would be recommended to the zoning board planning board, that these issues need to be addressed with proper zoning and planning and purposing. Otherwise, without that, the planning board has, yes, a growth mind back in their head, but for the most part, they're still working with a document that limits them pertaining to that, because there's not a broader perspective written into the document. So it may be that some of those divisions that we have, like in village and rural ag and commercial and industrial, some of those definitions need to be expanded upon with a subpoint or two to say, these are our limits, these are our guidelines. Or maybe it's a document that lays over first to say, this is our master plan perspective, this will set the tone for the rest. Because I asked that question of the planning board, if that's the case, so then why is that document not sitting at our desk every time someone comes to us for a conceptual? And sometimes the conceptual is still within the limits of whatever region they're building in or developing in. And it is not, there's no teeth to say, no, we don't want to have that, unless the community has agreed upon that. And that's where this whole process of casting the master plan before the planning board, to have a perspective to give to the community, to say, this is our 10-year plan. Because that's what we should be looking at. Because every 10 years you're supposed to redo the master plan. And as it is, we're now into year 2 of that process. Because we started last fall, didn't we?
Yeah. I think, excuse me, that goal is an excellent one. There is a lot of commentary here. A lot. There is a sampling of anecdotal evidence here about, like, why did the planning board let X, Y, or Z happen? And it is easier either to justify that or to avoid that if you have some guidance as a member of the planning board.
Right.
Like,
Well,
yeah.
go ahead. It's, I'll just use Dollar General as an example. That blew up on Facebook when that was going up. Yet, it's all permitted within that zone. It's commercially zoned property. So, how do you then say you can't do that here? Because there's nothing in our zoning that prohibits that. In contrast, dog kennels are prohibited in town. Because it's not mentioned.
Yeah.
There's no guidelines to it. So you now have a niche of information or potential industry, so to speak, for our community that can't be done because it's not identified.
Yeah.
So all those types of things are like, okay, so ultimately the purpose in planning is then to look at what does our zoning say? Because that's the purview of the planning board. Zoning board is just saying whether you can be exempt from those rules and regulations. So the rules and regulations need to be assessed from beginning to end again as a result of this.
Yeah, and to use your Dollar General example, like, in my opinion, it's not wise for an organization, like, for a government to knee-jerk react to an outburst of citizen concern. It is maybe a vocal minority just showed up and most people are okay with it. When you get data, though, that is more thoughtful and not just this responsive knee-jerk reaction to a very acute event like a Dollar General, but instead have, like, okay, people with cool heads are giving us, we asked intentionally, hopefully unguided questions, we got good data back, and now we can say, rather than say, let's respond to the Dollar General event by banning commercial and being, absurd there. But
Correct.
now the planning board may be able to say, you know what? How could we not prevent, but perhaps guide an event like that better in the future ahead of that happening? You can't, if they show up and there's nothing that says they can't, then they can. And so how you get ahead of that by saying, how will we put the guardrails on the growth of our community that lines up with what people are asking for?
Right.
And that comes, as you're saying, by way of the planning board or individual citizens proposing zoning amendments.
Correct. But also, even within the context of our zoning, all the things that they would long to have are already built into being permitted. Okay?
But
Just
the
as
opposite isn't always true.
correct. But what we can't do, the planning board's responsibility is not to go find industry to come to town. If that fell on anybody's plate, that would be upon the selectmen's plate.
Well, let's take
To
we
draw
can take a
that.
reverse example for, so there's the Dollar General, but then let's say there's the small market cafe on the corner of 114 and Quaker Street. They were gonna do a coffee thing,
Yeah.
like a farmer's market thing, and there were a number of challenges they couldn't overcome. So for an example like that, it would be wonderful if the planning board could or help them along, because like, let's say you identified them as a type of business that the town does want. Like, how can the planning board support their success and not the failure that happened, and now we have just junk kings on like a prime corner in a commercial area, right? Like, how could we have made it work?
The only way that could have worked is if the plan of procedure that they presented was forthcoming. There was a lot of things that happened after they opened the market area that put people off, that didn't welcome people because of one incident. So that one incident then blew up to say, I'm not gonna tell what the incident is, but the incident put a bad taste in people's mouths. Then the subsequent thing is COVID happens after that, but then the coffee thing wasn't thought through because there was no means built into the coffee truck having proper water and proper sewage, et cetera, as to where the water was coming from and what type of source was it a healthy source, et cetera, all those things. So the challenge went back to them to say that you need to address these issues in order to make this a realization. And it ended up that they didn't want to address those issues, okay? So it's sometimes a situation that live free and die becomes the normative thing. We'll say sorry instead of ask for permission. so that we're not really planning for those things to be forthcoming or developing, and getting all our information out so that there can be a wise decision made. So that's, I mean, that's an educational piece, that, and that's why we often take conceptuals quite often during our work sessions. It's not designed to be a public meeting. It's a work session for us to be addressing concerns in the zoning. You know, like one of those things that has come to us from the building department is unregistered vehicles, and accumulation of junk in people's yards. And so how does that fit into zoning and so forth? Because if there's complaints coming to building department about those things, well, they need to have code to enforce it, but there isn't a code to enforce it, or to even address it, and is it real that you need to? Is it, is the pile of junk behind your house your pile of junk, as opposed to everybody is worried about your pile of junk? And for that matter, I just have to go across the street in the river to behind our metal building, and there are cars out there that are antiquated and rotting, that not on our property, it's on a neighbor's property, but that's been there before 5 neighbors before that neighbor, type of thing. But it's like, because it's not out on the main driveway, it's not an issue. So you begin to wonder, how do you protect individual properties? It's similar to the structure of, how do we prevent or monitor people camping in a camper over the winter and living in a camper next to a house because there's not enough room or they don't have a place to live? Is that safe? Is it designed to be that way?
Yeah, that
All over the
particular example, I don't understand why we care, but.
It becomes a public
But
safety
the broader idea is, it's up to the town to make those decisions.
Right.
If this town chooses to allow that or restrict it, that needs to be done. The planning board needs to say, you know what, we need to get the town's opinion on these by proposing amendments.
Right.
Then the town gets to vote on those amendments. I would hope the planning board would consider not just how do we encourage, but in what ways should we be more restrictive, and wording things appropriately. And then once, that's the ultimate way to get the public feedback, is by town vote.
Right.
That's the only, legally binding way.
Right. Right. All right, so I think at this point we are at the assessment. Just review it, read it over, identify things that just leap off the page for you to say, this is important. And we can go from there.
Like, put together our impressions with the machine impressions and.
Right. So what I'll do is I'll put together the sentiment, the word cloud, and the thematic for each of those other questions that are not just data, that is personal information. What's a better way to call it?
But after you enter the
Yes.
paper ones.
Yes. Yeah, so what you have doesn't include the 27 paper ones.
All right, well, we have a significant amount of responses, so.
Right. I mean, there are some responses in there that says no, so you're just gonna scratch that out. To a certain degree, because some of those say, no, I don't want to say anything more, no.
Yeah.
It's helpful because it's a no, but the other part that's helpful is that when you look at the top of those, like question 35 is 371 answered, 88 skipped. So those types of things are when we look at those individual responses, like question 39, is there anything else to say regarding this section? There's only 90 responses and 369 of them skipped it. You know, that ratio is important to know that. And you're gonna have in the, what I printed out, the 90 responses, but you'll have further responses plus 27 if there are any. Okay?
Yeah, let's wrap our heads around the survey.
Yeah, I mean, don't lose sleep over it.
I like this. Someone said, what is the worst thing about where? Someone said black flies.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had an outbreak of those last Monday, Tuesday. I can't remember what day it was. Last weekend. It's like, what happened to black fly season being done? And then poof. So as I said, when I update it again, I'll put the PDF out again for you to peruse,
That'd be great, yeah.
so that it's totally updated. And when the PDF comes, I will, I think I can, share the analysis. So if I share that with you, you'll be able to look at all those sub-things.
Sorry. Some of the, like, again, what's the worst thing? The name. Every time someone asks where I'm from, they make the where joke. Like, yeah.
Put it in the report.
Yeah.
Well, would it be better to call it ESHAC?
Right.
When we moved to Glen, we talked about going over the Kangamangas. Did we get ripped for that? 'Cause they said, so why do you add letters?
Yeah.
It's the Kankamagas. And there's no G, and there's no second N. And so, you know, and then you hear Channel 9 or some regional tourism, the Kangamangas, and it's like, how do you read that? I mean, yeah, there's things that we say like Worcester or Peabody or Peabody, you know, type of thing, and instead of
Yeah.
what it says.
Yeah.
I always got a kick when someone was on Jeopardy. And they'd say, here, such and so from Worcester, Massachusetts.
Yeah, some of those names are tough.
Yeah.
There was one of the comments, there was a good one raising the point of a townwide discussion. And in previous master plan deliberations, there have been sessions where people could talk. Are we considering something like that to help tie it all together? Or are we thinking, you know, we have hundreds of responses, we have all the data, let's run with it?
Good question. When we did it the last time, it was a process where that was the starting point to ask questions.
Right, right.
So then the questions were asked based upon that starting point. Focus groups, if you want to call them that. So then the UNH Cooperative Extension, I can't remember if they did it or somebody else did it. They took that as the place to start. So we have already started from that perspective, based upon the questions that were asked the last time. We expanded that so that there were more questions to be asked or categories to be reassessed in a different way. I'm thinking that once we finalize the report and our recommendations to the planning board, then we probably should have a discussion.
Publicize the report, and then people can voice their support,
Right, but to
concerns.
do so live as opposed to facilitate a conversation.
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate at this point. I think we need to synthesize this first.
Right. Given also the realization that we've got twice as many responses than the last time. There were just under 200 responses from 2004.
Could be a
We've-
similar response rate though, if the population doubled.
I don't think it's doubled. I think it's only gone up by 2,000 people.
Okay.
Because I think it was like 7,500 people then, 9,500 people now. Something like that. I may be wrong. I may
It's okay.
I may need to go look more closely at that.
I guess what I'm still pondering in my head is how will we show the conclusions we come to? I guess, I mean, sentiment analysis will spit out what it says. I mean, we can point to that,
Yep.
but I'm not a data analyst or a statistician, so personally, I'll be powerless to be able to say, well, 75% of people feel this way. Like, it's, broadly speaking, we'll figure it out. But can we pinpoint it harder than that? Or we're okay being broad? Does that?
I guess no, and my gut reaction is the more precise we think we can be, the more helpful we can be. Because otherwise we're passing the buck to somebody else to figure it out when we are the ones most familiar with, like, what went into this.
I'm just saying, like, how can we, like, defend our thesis? You know what I mean? Like, we come to a conclusion, and how do we show our process? So I guess I'm just curious, what is the process? So I guess I'm just thinking aloud here.
No, I think that's a good point. Because that way, if we are right now under the auspices of the planning board. Because it's the planning board's responsibility to develop the master plan. There's no guidance to say that this has to be approved by the community. That I remember. It may be there. But within that context then, what we do then needs to be as precise as possible to present to them, for them to evaluate. And as we noted earlier, I think upon their evaluation, a communication to the community to say they have an opportunity, here's the goals and procedures that we've used to come up with this plan. This is going to affect our zoning in this way. These are the plans and procedures that the planning board will do to implement zoning amendments to address these issues. And this will be for this next 10 years.
And all of this, all of these survey responses we have, is this in the public domain?
Not available at this point.
I'm just curious about just general transparency, that, once
Yeah.
we do come have our report, this should all be like
Absolutely.
out there, right?
That's why I said, so we'll have a cover page to say what this is a master plan survey results.
Okay.
Here's our demographic, here's the demographic of, or here's the master, I mean, because that's, I think it was Hooksett. All their answers to their questions, that was their master plan. When it was not their master, it's just the responses. So those responses then give us, I'm not certain if we have to give all the detailed information. As far as the handwritten responses, the pros and cons, maybe we can do a summary statement, because I think that's what the original master plan did, is a summary statement. So that would be easy when we look at themes and sentiment. We can make a summary statement about the physical responses that way.
Yeah. To the first question we started talking about at the begin, or the first time you pulled up the
Yep.
cloud there, and it said children, that's, when we talk about being precise and giving good data, that's the first one that jumps out at me. It was the very first one, and I think if somebody saw that, they would say, oh, wow, people are very concerned about the children in town. But we know that it's actually about the poor quality of one of the questions on the survey. And so it is our duty to make sure that that is properly conveyed, to avoid those kind of misinterpretations, like
Correct.
gross
But-
misinterpretations.
But that question is dealing with demographic.
Yeah, I just use
So
as
that's
one
distinctively-
example.
That's distinctively different than the rest of the document.
But as one example, later
Yes.
on, if there's another cloud, the whole thing says like roads. And somebody says, oh, wow, people really care about the roads. But then you look at it and it says, again, as an example, our roads are phenomenal. We don't need to do anything.
Right.
But if all we're doing is handing data to somebody,
Well, so-
they're not going to do a deep
So-
dive on it.
So, we only come to that conclusion because we do the cloud. Would you agree? I mean, let the data speak for itself and let them make their own cloud, as opposed to us making a cloud.
Yeah, I think that's safer.
I think a thematic decision or analysis is a better way than just looking at words. Because words will tell us something that will leap off the page, but we don't know the context of those words being used.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And
So it helps but doesn't help. So that would be an analysis part that we would do to say, the data doesn't support that thought. Because,
yeah, we can't just
Section
trust the
1.
tool.
correct.
And
We can't, and the thing is, when we do the thematic analysis or even the cloud, we can't manipulate that. So what it says is what it says. Do you understand?
by way of their algorithm.
Correct.
And so again, to use that example of children, but it's because everybody's saying you didn't allow zero option for children. You need to have at least one child. Like,
Yeah.
that is, presenting that would not be helpful.
Correct.
In that
How
format.
granular are these tools? Like, can we tell it, like, hey, like, other than children, what do you see there? Like, ignore, I'm totally unfamiliar with this toolkit here.
Yeah, and that's why I'm poking at the cloud. I think maybe it's a poor thing to
Right.
share as part of a final. It's good for us to look at because we are going to go through all the data with the fine-tooth comb. I don't think it's good to share as part of our result set,
Right.
because it can so easily be misinterpreted. But to better answer your question, what was the other tool you referenced? The thematic, right?
Thematic.
And that was capturing the same ideas but into like partial statements rather than individual words. So instead of children, I'm guessing it would say something like incorrect children option, 50%. Making up numbers.
Yeah.
Can I see it's underneath that right there.
And to go back to something earlier, I am a little rusty, but you asked the question, Phil, about in the public domain. So I think most precisely, this is all information that somebody could put a 91A request in, but
Correct.
we are not it's not like gonna be posted on the website or anytime soon. But it's not, it is public data that somebody could come and ask for.
Got it.
So, I guess the question became,
Well, and we talked about a cross-section.
so question 10, which was a 2-point question in our draft.
Yep.
So there was how many children are under
Yep.
18? Number of children, we
Yep.
missed that.
Yep. Well,
Because then we have the
yeah,
age groups.
Right.
Because the age groups,
And we had,
Or zero-
we
or
had
11.
others where we had zero properly, but I think this
0
was-
to, I mean, we
was
talk
missed.
about years, so
Yeah,
that part's
exactly.
there. So question 11 became 12, 12 became 13. Now that's even changed.
This one should have this should have had a 0 just like that does.
Correct.
And we just missed it.
Yeah. Bruce brought that up when I gave him the summary.
The summary of the,
That.
right, he brought up what people were telling us?
No, he observed. He said, oh, you didn't have a 0. So,
Well, that was part of the review process as well by the planning board.
right. Review for all of us. Because there was like, there's 2 different links. One link that I had sent to go into had some misspellings still. And I didn't see them. We didn't see them. We went through the whole thing, made sure there weren't any misspellings. But when you took the document and made it a PDF, a writable PDF, all these errors showed up. So that I corrected them, and so the second link, which was linked on the town website, had all the corrected spellings. But it's the same document. Nothing else changed but the spelling. Again, I think you hit it on the head just a moment ago, Salem, that this is a tool. It's not carved in stone. It's a tool to be discerning about.
Just sort of an aside to drill down into question 10, because of the problem with 0 not being an option. Look at how many people skipped that question, but the question's just adjacent to it. You know, that's almost 100% response rate on like, what is your marital status? 444 answered, 4 skipped, versus the children question. I'm gonna just interpret every skip as a 0. Basically, it's like.
Roughly.
assumption there.
There were also some text answers that said, I put a 1 because there was no 0 option. So in addition to what, in addition to what you're saying,
Right. That's on question 17.
yeah, it was in here somewhere. Yeah, like response 45, had to choose 1.
Yeah, question. Yeah, how can you? So I'll look at it over here. Yeah, there's some statements that get addressed elsewhere too, so. Well, the other thing is, it says restrict large developments because that's what makes Ware pretty, number 93. And you know, the large developments are unseen by the general populace.
What? What? What?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Right, but but it's not just about seeing them. It's about feeling that. It's about having an influx of people, of cars.
Oh,
So like, it's,
I understand. But we also have to realize that we're also a travel route for Deering, Francistown, New Boston, for people to get to work in Concord or north of here to come through town. But my observation was that as far as the town being pretty, it's true, but some of that prettiness is because we only travel so far,
well,
right?
but if
Where's
it's because you
travel
don't
zone?
have to travel very far
It's-
because
it's
your home's pretty.
subjective.
Right?
Beauty is subjective. I have my own ideas, but.
Yeah. Well, I haven't read everything, so I'm wondering how much, any observations concerning light pollution?
That's a good one. Yeah, I wish I'd thought of that.
You know, I don't know if there's a comment about that.
Why do you bring it up?
No, I'm just curious, because when Pat's Peak is open, there's light pollution in my yard. There's light pollution for everybody in South Ware from Manchester. If you go on the top of Grandview Drive, you can see Concord's light pollution, you can see Manchester's light pollution, you can see Pat's Peaks.
I'm on the Deering side, so I deal with Crouching Mountains.
Yeah, there you go.
But that's neither here nor there, right? That's like,
Right, but that's normal. So what is it that what is your pet peeve then? You know what I mean? Sometimes we go through those stages of pet peeves that you need lighting for safety, because you don't want people tramping over your property. But both of you live off the main drag far enough that there's not a lot of people coming up your road.
I wish that were true.
Well,
But when,
compared to my
when
house.
there's a subdivision
Compared to my
dropped
house,
in down the
the
road,
amount of people that go by my house on a regular basis is significantly different than both your houses. So, you know, those type of experiences aren't gonna show up unless we could sit down with each individual and say, so why'd you say this? Tell us more. But we don't know who said what. We can get information as to the age group and the demographic part, but not the particular individual.
I mean, if you want to go that route, then you can determine how many people live on a state road, on a dirt road. It's possible if you think that's worth doing.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just making an observation that how we perceive what our priorities are based where home is. But then, as Phil said earlier, it's subjective, what pretty is, and what, you know, we moved from inner city Peabody to Glen, New Hampshire. It was like going to another world.
Well,
Where we lived in Glen, New Hampshire was right on 302. And my wife said, I can't live here. I said, why? It's too close to the highway. And the second time we went, we stayed in the parsonage, and we're sitting in the living room reading, and this trailer truck went by. And the bridge was an older bridge at the time, so you heard it go over the bridge, but it shook the windows in the house. And I said to her, so did you hear that? Hear what? She didn't hear the truck go by because it became normative. And that's kind of how life is, you know, when every now and then there's the guy with the cannon here, and every now and then there's a guy with a tannerite here, and
You
it's,
can hear that guy?
yeah,
It's probably a different guy.
and
That
it's,
guy-
and it's like,
I can't.
it's real, but yet that's where, that's what makes where
Well,
where.
but to come back, yeah, sure, it's subjective, but the whole point is to decide what to put forward to town vote. So,
Right.
like, when things like a noise ordinance have been put forward, they get shot down over and over and over again.
Right.
So that's not, in my opinion, worth asking about again,
Amen.
despite
Yep.
some feedback about that. So what things have perhaps not been asked in a town vote setting, that would modify the zoning and be informative, to then allow for follow-on, because it's, you're right, it's the 10-year master plan, but it's also, I mean, I guess that's the whole point, is what questions should be put on the ballot for the next 10 years, is
Correct.
another way to slice it.
Right, yeah.
And that's, it's very easy to get lost in the data and say, well, how could we make a determination? And we don't have to. We don't have to make a determination on zoning. The people will make the determination. All that, like, but only with what's put in front of them.
Right. And what, I'll say this, that one of the things that tends to happen is that a zoning change comes with very little input from the community because there's not an interest from the community. It's not like the information's not out there to say that these things are coming up. Whether they're not reading the postings or whether they're not watching or interested or whatever, which again is the demographic gives us a group of people that are interested. So those are the people we need to be talking to, the ones who are interested. But even then, when you make the information available, then not everybody's there on
Well,
board.
I mean, using just last year as an example, though, like, we went through the process on the planning board of, we are not going to have anything. And if you watch that meeting, okay, you're checked out. And then the next meeting, all of a sudden, there are 4 things.
Correct.
Well, that's,
Right.
like,
I agree.
stop doing that.
Right, right.
And that's,
Well-
I know, like, you banged the drum last year, I assume you are this year, of start earlier.
Yeah,
I-
we've
I
already
have-
started.
I have no idea what's going
Yeah.
on. It's pretty nice. But that's how you solve that particular problem.
Correct.
Don't spring it on people at the end.
Well, so there's that tension built into our various committees that are actively going now, saying, well, we didn't know, we didn't know, we didn't know. Well, if you're concerned about things that the planning board is doing, you need to not only ask, but be responsible yourself to engage with the process.
That sounds like conservation. I'm not sure I agree with that.
I'm not gonna,
That,
speak to
that
that.
one's on planning. No.
but I'm hoping that we'll be able to discern about communication, whether that's an issue. And if it isn't, then I'm surprised. Because communication is something that between boards is lacking. It's almost like we need an information officer.
Yeah. I mean, we
Well,
asked
someone
a couple of questions though about, and I don't remember what the responses were about. Are you interested in I forget how we ended up wording it, but like multimedia. Gosh.
Right, but
Do-
there's a means by which you get the information out there, and you can be using multiple venues. But that doesn't mean anybody's reading any of those things. Okay? So the issue then becomes, all right, so the information's quote-unquote out there, but what are we doing to facilitate an education piece? And the education piece is where we're lacking at all levels. We're not doing enough education to say, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And bring people up to speed as to that direction and purpose. Because if that's not taking place, this master plan is just another piece of paper that goes in a file for 10 years, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah, that's spot on. It's always, there's a chain of accountability that is not always enforced.
No, and it's hard because everybody's got a lot going on their plate. And how do you be sure that what happened doesn't get lost in the cracks? When you say, this is important, we need to do this, and we don't. I mean, we talked about that for the beginning part of this and why it was important. We never got to that education piece to remind the people why we're doing this. Because life got busy. And we're all volunteers. It's not like we don't have a job. We're not all retired. And even then, in our retirement, most of the people I know in retirement have no time either. Because they're catching up on all the things they put off their whole life, and it's not extra things, it's normal things like painting the house or whatever it might be. So we have planned to meet the first Wednesday of the month at this point.
Should be okay. So that would be November 5th. I would be coming straight from Cub Scouts, maybe a couple minutes late.
Okay.
Speaking of busy with
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah, my 16th granddaughter just came home from the hospital today. 16th grandchild, and she's a girl, but
Congratulations.
she was born in August,
Oh.
so she had some troubles. But it was really cool to have her come home today. Yeah. So I can't use a 15-passenger van.
Yeah. Do you have a CDO?
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
But get a bus license to. Or that 2 16-passenger, 15-passenger vans will do it. I drive one, my wife drive the other, and then we'll all spread out. Okay? So, our task between now and then is to review the material and identify actionables, things that leap off the page and say, that's something we can do, or suggest, or whatever, as opposed to going in a deep dive of analyzing every little detail. We should look at whatever leaps off the page as important, first off.
Yeah, definitely circling the actionables, but just general sentiment is also
Correct.
just as important.
And I'll send out those 3 things within the next week
I think we've been successful in the last, because this is stage 3, I believe, the last 2 of setting a date. For
Right.
instance, sending out the tax bill, so we have to be done,
Right.
and we did it. Obviously, we are not going to be influencing anything ahead of, like this year's warrant.
No.
And so I'm trying to work backwards from something.
So why don't we say either April or May?
For the conclusion of this phase.
So the report would be done and recommendations to the board be done by May.
Yeah, okay.
Does that seem reasonable?
Not sure yet, but let's say yes.
Well, we can, tentative goal.
Yeah, because that buys us, whether it's December, January, people going on vacation, whatnot, there's, I think that's achievable. And we ended up crunching a couple of meetings per month at the end there.
Yeah. I mean, if that's something we want to do, we can ask for extra time to be on the calendar another night, but obviously, all 3 of us have got other things going on besides this, so. Right?
So we're circling just tentatively May.
May 2026 as a tentative goal.
That's
That way, if it's accepted by the planning board, any actionables that need to go into play right away can be worked on starting in June for the warrant of 2027.
Yep.
Yeah, see what we can do.
Because as it is, we've got 4 things that are pertinent that have come to us because of what the state did over the summer. And so we have to address some of those concerns and whether we want to change or not change things. Because we've been inundated since the state said detached ADUs are now, you can't zone against them. So people have been asking the building department, what does that look like? And the parameters, it can't be less than 750 square feet and can't be more than 950 square feet. And ours are right now 750. So until that changes, whether it goes to 950 or 2,500 square feet, I don't know. But we have to address that for the people to understand what the parameters are. And right now we have language that only addresses an attached ADU. There's no language for a detached ADU. So the attached can't have a main entrance that faces the same way as the main entrance to the home. And it has to have access from the main home into the ADU.
And if you put a breezeway on it, call it a duplex, have a friend on the board, and you're good to go.
Yeah. I don't know if that ever happened, but.
Okay.
But my point is that there are parameters already instead in the zoning, but there's nothing for this other thing. So that has to change to be in there somehow, because that's what the state's mandated. Which feasibly, I can understand the reasoning. It's because there's a housing crunch that we can't change. There are a lot of people who either were renters or now become, needing a grandma pod type of housing situation, and you can't do it because it has to be attached.
700 square feet.
What's that?
Right.
Should have said that on camera.
Yeah, like, why can't a town make that decision? If,
Well, it can.
not anymore.
Well, there's still parameters that we have to iron out to say, is it just that, or is it this? We can't prohibit it, but we can still say it's 750 square feet. But,
Concord. Like DC.
Concord, but I'll just say one political thought. I don't know how Concord gets anything done with 400 plus people. I don't know how it works. There's too many people.
Maybe they shouldn't. If they're gonna get stuff like that done.
So it's weird. It's always been a puzzle to me why New Hampshire has one of the largest legislators in the country.
In the world.
Yeah.
I'm totally ignorant to state politics, so I can't even chime in here.
State House and the House, I think, House and Senate is over 400 people.
Well, the Senate's 12. 12? But the House is exactly 400.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
the Senate's 12. But yeah, at least when I was a kid, the trivia was New Hampshire was the second largest after like the Russian.
Parliament.
Yeah.
What, in terms of?
Who knows if that was true
Per
30 years
capita
ago.
representation?
Just number of people.
Just sheer.
No, I think you're right though. I think it was per capita representation.
You're saying in Texas, there's fewer people in their state house than ours?
I think you got it though. It was per capita. 'Cause
I don't know.
So,
It's hard
It's
enough
been
to
fun.
get 12 people to agree on one thing.
yeah.
How do you get 400 people?
Strong leadership. Can we make a motion to adjourn?
Yes, please.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
So go get the camera.
So with that said, we'll try to keep our process to an hour like we did in the past.